Hello everyone and welcome back to Cinema Shakedown, the weekly podcast that functions as a grab bag for all things film. I'm your host, Kyle Craigbaum.
And I'm your other host, Jordan Dennis, on the podcast where we're not allowed to have fun and throw up on Kyle.
Right? I'm the other host, Dylan Miller, a.k.a. the politically violent Prince of Podcast.
Ooh, a little
topical.
And
then we are ending that topic now.
What, you don't want to get into that?
Not really.
Alright, fair.
Alright.
Alright, you know what, that's fair. I'm glad you gave us the warning off the top before I said something.
Yeah, real shit.
Like, you know what, like, alright, that's fair.
Me and Jordan kind of planned having our own little...
Yeah, no, we had like a whole section carved out that we were going to talk about it.
The feds are going to like this one.
Yeah, hey, at least we'll finally get someone listening.
How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing alright. How you doing, man?
You know what? I'm tired.
Yeah, I felt that. This is a late night
episode.
After hours.
The morning.
Cinema Shakedown special.
And we're ready to talk about some fucking movies. Have you guys seen anything besides the ones we're talking about today?
I watched, I'm a big fan of Derek Cianfrance. I watched his third movie, Light Between Oceans.
Pretty good?
It's fine.
Yeah?
He single-handedly carries the movie.
Sure.
As a director. You ever watch a movie where, it's this, I don't want to say the style, but, the voice behind it is very clearly, Spielberg's lamest movies. You can still be like, oh, that's still the guy.
Sure.
That's my boy.
That's how I felt about it. It's the most,
we were
inoffensive.
literally just having that conversation the other day. I was like, even when he drops mid, still well made. The dude knows how to make a movie, So
1941.
We don't know. We scratched that one off the record.
Yeah, there's a couple, but for the most part, I agree with what you're saying.
I would
absolutely. Okay. I don't think I've seen anything else besides The Boys and House of the Dragon and all those shows I'm watching.
TV's
Sopranos.
going crazy right now.
Absolutely, it is.
It's gonna be a fun episode.
Honestly,
get enthusiastic.
Oh no, I'm gonna get enthusiastic about this fucking movies, dude.
Episode, yeah.
I'm getting enthusiastic.
Thighs out, dude.
Yeah.
So do we just want to hop in?
Let's jump right into it.
All right. So this week, the release of Longlegs encouraged us to go back and watch some famous kind of detective thriller horror kind of hybrids.
Serial killer vibes.
So we each picked one. We're going to go through in release order, earliest to newest. So we're starting with yours. You want to introduce the beast?
If I wake the fuck up, maybe. So my pick for this week was, of course, arguably the most iconic serial killer detective thriller ever made.
Hands down.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yep.
Which I had never seen before.
That's... God, I'm
and
so glad I got to sit there
and
watch that for the very first time.
And it had been years since I've seen it.
Not to spoil our opinions on that movie.
No, but I mean, that's crazy. That's one of those movies that, it's very rare.
Yeah.
You can watch someone's first time with it, because it's kind of one of those movies that, everyone has seen, so it's
Before you start, spoilers for Silence of the Lambs, Cure, and Memories of Murder. The bat.
There goes the introductions.
Yep. So, Silence of the Lambs. How do you introduce it, man?
Oh, man. Okay, so there's Jodie Foster.
My second favorite lesbian.
Who's your first?
Drake.
That's the comedic timing on that one was good. I'll give you that. I'll give you it.
We're on fire today.
Aubrey Graham.
No, Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster plays Clarice Starling, who is not like us because she is a woman in the FBI. And she is tasked by her superiors to get inside the head of convicted serial killer and cannibal Dr. Hannibal Lecter in order to gain some new insight on the case of a separate serial killer that the FBI is currently trying to catch, named Buffalo Bill.
Yep.
And it's kind of all about the relationship she forms with Hannibal and their kind of dynamic as it leads to the FBI going down and trying to solve this case.
Yep.
Wonderfully said.
Yeah, it's a classic for a reason.
It's fucking believable.
I mean, it's one of those movies that, what do you even say about it?
Right.
It's perfectly acted across the board. It looks great. It moves great. It's paced exceptionally.
Has some truly harrowing, terrifying sequences in it.
Maybe one of the most technically sound movies ever made. The editing really stood out to me on this watch.
The editing is fantastic.
That
the
whole
thing
sequence
is just precision.
towards the end, I think you know what I'm talking about, where it's the FBI raiding who they think is Buffalo Bill's home. And it's cut with Clarice going up to a house, and then the reveal when Buffalo Bill opens the door, it's Clarice there, and it's like,
you guys ever see The Black Phone?
The Black Phone?
It just completely rips that.
Of course it
does.
does.
The 100%. Is that the one with
Ethan Hawke?
Yeah, okay, whatever.
But
did we do a Black Phone episode?
We did.
Check out our Black Phone episode.
I like it. It's a good episode.
The thing is, I agree with you on the editing, especially how it takes moments that are almost like serene and always juxtaposes them with something very intense, a scream or a murder. And, like there's a iconic scene where a woman is screaming from inside a well, and it keeps cutting back and forth with like a peaceful moment of Buffalo Bill applying lipstick and makeup.
I would fuck me so hard.
I think, you want to get up and do the dance? I think,
Am I literally
I think
character?
Silence and all the movies we talk about today, even the ones that we may not be exceptionally like fans of, I think they all do a really good job at establishing an atmosphere that
I agree with
never makes you feel at ease.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like the whole time throughout and throughout Silence specifically, you're kind of, because they do there's a whole kind of sexism dynamic with her being a female agent in the FBI. Jonathan Demme kind of chooses. I've never read the book, so I'm not sure how explicit this is made in the book, but in the movie, there's tons of scenes of like, whenever she's like interacting with like a male character, it'll kind of like the camera will kind of linger on the male character, like looking at her for like just a second too long to where it makes you a little uncomfortable. And there's a couple of POV shots from her perspective where she'll like look around a room with a bunch of her male like colleagues, and they're just
like leering.
They're leering, like they're just giving her, and it's interesting. I hold on, I'm cooking here.
Yeah, I believe it.
So, all the men in this movie kind of view her as a slab of meat, and the only man she gets any respect from
is the literal cannibal.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a great. I was gonna say
there's something to the Silence of the Lambs.
I think that's probably the like least surface level you'll get, at least out of me, is like, because what I was gonna say was everybody in this movie feels like a predator, but the one guy in this movie
who feels like charming and approachable is
the actual fucking predator,
the biggest monster,
the apex predator,
like probably worse than Buffalo Bill.
Historically, canonically,
I would say
the worst.
Buffalo
Bill was just a...
Buffalo Bill he just wanted to wear a woman's suit.
Yeah.
I get it.
He was
like,
just a transvestite.
Listen, I get
that was the scariest thing in the 90s.
I think, but I think it's really funny. I don't know if this was like an act of extreme foresight on Jonathan Demme's part, or Hannibal Lecter's like, no, he's not a real transsexual. he takes a moment to like just he's just crazy and deluded. He's he doesn't really have gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
So like you can like now when I think that's kind of what has saved this movie a little bit from
from aging poorly.
Cancel culture.
No, I agree. I agree with you though.
And it's not like it doesn't handle those themes well, but I think like just throwing in that line is I think a very funny.
It could have gone a very like weird direction. 20 years later, of just like
it could have aged terribly if like they were like
transphobic.
Yeah, like shit.
But
I would have liked the.
Stop it.
Kidding.
I need a water bottle whenever you start to get like edgy and problem and like no.
There's a.
This is our best clip of the last episode though.
My boss has listened to this from work.
Even better.
Oh god.
Give Kyle a raise.
I just got a raise. I'm good.
Give him another raise. Or I'll find you.
I'm not the first person to bring this up. This is definitely from opinions I've read and kind of given me a clearer thing. But the way that Jonathan Demme chooses to shoot, like human on human contact and eyes especially.
Those close-ups, man.
Those close-ups. It's
dangerous.
Like they say eyes are windows to the soul. I think that applies heavily here.
Yeah.
You can always tell when somebody, like exactly what Jodie Foster is experiencing, or exactly what like elation Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter is experiencing, which we'll get in his performance. It's unreal.
Yeah.
She's amazing as well. Buffalo Bill is as good as
I was about to say, I think he deserves as much credit.
But yeah, there's a shot, to go off your point of like the leering, a shot that stuck with me is near the end, and it's when she graduates from her program and she shakes hands with her superior.
Yeah.
And they kind of linger on their hands held. And in such a strange way, it's just stuck with me. You're like, really?
His face as well. Too.
It's like
correct.
They hold on his look.
Yeah.
It's like that asshole from Legally Blonde, her fucking professor that tries to essay her in the fucking office.
Yeah.
It's like that. So even when you've earned their respect, you know what I mean?
They still
and,
view
caught
you
the
as
killer. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct. And to go off that, this movie is very creepy and unnerving and
sure
uncomfortable. Every meeting with Hannibal Lecter, the way that he approaches conversation and you can see the cogs turning. It's almost like a chess match for him.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
you make the point about the eyes. It's kind of crazy how you can tell exactly what he's thinking, but also that there's just nothing there. The fact that it's
so much and nothing.
It's
at the
so
same
blank,
time.
but so expressive. You know what I mean?
I will be just a little mean for 1 second.
That's fine. I'm gonna be mean to Kieran 15 minutes.
I can't wait for that.
I only have a couple itty bitty nitpicks with this.
Hang on, let's get we'll usher in our new segment of the podcast called Kyle Shits on a Universally Loved Classic.
I'm not shitting on it.
Go on.
And then we'll do the same for Jordan as well.
I'm not shitting on this movie. Sometimes the score is a little dated. That's one of the only technical elements I felt showed its age a little bit.
I suppose.
Howard Shore's score is good, but it's also very that era of 90s sweeping, grandiose.
I don't know. It's funny. I think it's that. The score kind of gives me Twin Peaksy vibes a little bit, so I thought that might have
gives me Magnolia vibes.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that might have worked for you.
I didn't hate the score. There were only certain moments where I was it's showing its age.
I think it contrasts well with how dirty and grimy this movie is by having this score that's very orchestral.
It's kind of pristine.
I think that kind of it's another Hannibal Lecter thing. You know what I mean? It's this air of sophistication, but beneath it all is just rot.
Yeah. And that's totally fair. All of that, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Here, if you didn't agree with that one, you're not going to agree with this one.
I'm certainly not, but
I don't love the last scene of this movie.
It's so good, Kyle. it's a perfect fucking.
Hannibal Lecter in his toupee wig.
It looks so good on him. What are you talking about?
It's a scene that feels tonally much sillier than everything that's come before it. Feels like the ending to a comic book movie where the villain walks away into the night.
I like it because it's kind of like the movie's final scare, where for the last 20 to 30 minutes you kind of completely forget about Hannibal Lecter after he disappears from the movie.
Yeah.
And then she catches Buffalo Bill. She saved the day, whatever, and then that phone rings.
Sure.
And she picks it up, and you're like, oh fuck, I completely forgot about that.
I can see that.
I quite like the long take of him just trailing behind the guy. I think
that last shot is not what my problem is.
No,
it's the phone call.
The scene itself. I get it. I don't know. I think it. I don't think it's inconsistent with the movie.
I think it's one of the best endings of all time.
Yeah, I think
I'm having an old friend for dinner. It
tied the knot.
Mr. Lecter. Dr. Lecter? I don't know.
I said you weren't going to
No, I know.
Yeah. There's so much
does it for me.
Precision in this movie. Jonathan Demme is just such a fucking precise director. You mentioned the facial expressions and the close-ups.
It's not only the facial expressions, it's how he lights them as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
when not to use shadow.
It's the whole thing, man.
Agreed.
It's the mise en scène of the whole thing. It's the guy was just in control and knew how to use that control for quite literally. I mean, Jordan, it's one of those movies. It is one of the movies.
Remember when movies like this could win Best Picture at the Oscars?
Yeah. When they wouldn't go straight to streaming or be turned into a mini-series or something like this. Would have been a mini-series down the line. I'm sure it played a part in True Detective or something along those lines.
I mean, they literally
adapted this into a TV show.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah.
That was right there for me.
Yeah,
And I went straight to True Detective.
Can we talk about how they know the exact right moment in the movie to let Hannibal Lecter go sicko mode?
Yeah.
Like, they build across a few brilliant scenes, the least of which my favorite scene in the movie, like the last build-up scene, which is where the title comes from, the story about the lambs. Fucking incredible.
That
sequence.
whole like middle sequence in the movie, like him and Clarice's conversation.
That whole bit with
his breakout.
That
like,
whole bit with the face.
when he strings the cop up in the crucifix.
And the face is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
So he does that to like distract them, right? To basically give them like something to look at. So nobody will look at the corpse too hard.
Spectacle.
Because that was the first. Like I was like, that's cool. Why do you do all that? But that was just connected the dots.
Because he's playing 8D chess at all times.
Wears a dude's face on his face.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like how he wears the muzzle one time, and that became like
iconic.
His iconic look. Like,
oh my god, they used it in the TV show like 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
Yeah, that like muzzle. What else was there to say about this? I mean, it's
There's not a whole
like
lot
the
of
whole sequence in Buffalo Bill's basement with the night vision.
iconic.
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
Fucking incredible.
One of the best horror scenes.
at her hair.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
God.
Just crazy.
I love that she just turns around and smokes him.
Yeah.
Like, he's-
Yeah. And let me tell you, for better or for worse, elements of all 3 movies we're talking about are present in Longlegs.
Yes.
And that is true of the main character of Longlegs, which is very clearly
Longlegs
going for,
Longlegs certainly
Clarice.
takes a lot of inspiration from Silence of the Lambs, but kind of gives it a little bit more of like a supernatural. Like this movie is not supernatural
Yeah, it's very based
at
on
all. It's very
reality.
grounded. It's very
Yep. Anything else to add on Silence of the Lambs?
It's one of those movies. There's nothing we can say that's gonna be all that.
I'd give this a fucking 6 out of 5 if I could.
Okay.
It's 5. It's perfect. Like I don't know. Like it's one of those things where it's like you can nitpick it to death, but like at the end of the day, like I don't know. Like this movie's bigger than me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Bigger than all of us.
It's
This is my highest possible 4.5, and on a rewatch, it could absolutely hit a 5.
they're gonna kill you for that.
No,
Kyle.
not.
Your bitch too bad. You're
I
smoked too tough.
I understand. I think I was saying to Kyle afterwards, like, there is, if I was to remove myself from the fact that this movie is bigger than all of us, there is something sort of like unspectacular.
That's not the word
about
I
it.
use. Yeah.
Well, I brought up to you the whole, like, you'd recommend a 4.5 to almost everybody, right? But
Sure.
a 5 is typically more personal to you. There's something lacking personal to me.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that's what I meant by unspectacular.
I think it is also. We could say this about a lot of movies, but it is one of those movies that does get better on a rewatch.
Yeah. I
Also
believe
because
that.
it's so short and it throws a lot at you in that
flies
runtime.
by.
Like it's paced so well, but it is like
dense.
it's dense with shit. So you kind of I don't know. Like,
And I feel like I say that a lot, like 4.5 could be a 5 on a rewatch, because I don't usually a lot of the time give 5s like immediately.
Teetering.
It teeters. It's great. It's
I mean, it's your first time watching it in years. Like,
it's a masterpiece. It's fucking incredible.
Undeniably.
Jonathan Demme was cooking.
Yeah. So across the board, we love it.
Might top 10 best picture winner all time. Might be a
Agreed.
top 5 best acting performance Oscar winner.
And it's funny because when you
It's
say
up
that, I know you're talking about Hannibal Lecter, but like, I think that could apply to the main 3 performances in this movie.
Yeah, I mean Jodie Foster's great.
They're
That
all just so fucking.
I don't even know if I don't think Buffalo Bill was nominated, which
No, he
is
was
a
not.
damn shame because he's besides Hannibal Lecter probably like the most quoted part of that movie. People still do the fucking it puts the lotion in the basket. Like, people still do that. Like,
Put the fucking lotion in the basket.
oh, love him. Baby girl did nothing wrong.
So that was 91, correct?
Yes, long time ago.
So
Dinosaurs roam the earth.
6 years later, we get my pick, which is Japan's Cure by Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
Any relation?
No.
Really? No.
No.
Okay.
This
I thought he
movie.
was a descendant.
Let me re-examine my personal biases then.
This movie was inspired. It was basically Japan's answer to Seven.
It's like 7 meets Silence of the Lambs. Like it's
It
like
took from Seven. and it is.
Also, we're not talking about Seven for some reason.
Because we didn't pick it.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
Have you've seen Seven?
No. That's why I was really excited. That's why I was
and
really excited for one of you to pick Seven.
I was like, I should pick Seven, but I guarantee he's already seen it.
Yeah.
I've not seen it.
Motherfuck.
I'm
We'll save it for a Fincher episode.
Yeah,
we'll save it.
that's the thing. So this movie revolves around a detective who kind of gets caught up in a.
Who is Japanese?
Yes, who gets caught up in a serial killer.
Who's not really a
Case.
serial
Yeah.
killer.
So the case is there's a bunch of murders, and the only thing connecting all of them is that the victims. Like barely remember doing it, had no reasons to do
suspects
it.
have
Sorry,
barely
the
remember
sorry, yes,
the
the suspects.
don't really remember much.
Yeah, the suspects barely remember doing it. Didn't have like a good reason to
Like
do
they're
it.
clearly like out of it.
They're out of it. They seem hypnotized.
Did you guys see my Letterboxd review?
Of course I did.
Of course I did.
Why did you like it then? What the fuck?
Didn't agree. No, I'm kidding. Obviously.
So this movie, it made Bong Joon-ho's 10 favorite films list. It's one of David Fincher's favorite films. It's one of Martin Scorsese's favorite films. It's such a unique experience because I went in expecting. I don't really know what I was expecting. This has been on my watch list for a long time, but I wasn't expecting such like a drony like. Hypnotize. Yes, I was gonna say yes. Of course, it is
Make
designed.
the joke. Make the joke.
No. Suck of the hypnotized, but
it lures you into this like sense of just, especially every scene involving the serial killer who's hypnotizing people.
Yeah.
It's so precise in how it's shot and how it's edited. The rhythm of it. The rhythm the movie moves
the camera
at.
moves, especially when he's in the apartment.
So I was gonna say the way the camera moves, it very clearly inspired Bong Joon-ho for Memories of Murder.
Yes, 100%.
where it kind of it's long takes which will frame a scene and then kind of dance around the environment to reframe it, give us new details, give us new perspectives on things.
Yeah. Just the geography of the whole fucking thing.
The geography, it's. I fucking love this movie.
Yeah.
I really love it, and I'm
Pretty
still.
damn good.
This is the most recent one that I watched, so I watched it today. I'm still stewing on it.
Yeah. I watched it last night, and I am still like pondering.
Because I think that this is, some would argue for the better, some would argue for the worse. I think it's more thematically obtuse and a little more dense than the other ones that are a bit more straightforward. Like, there are different interpretations to this one that I feel like the other ones are like. It's not even Memories of Murder isn't a straightforward movie, but it's
not focused on the ambiguity though.
Correct.
At least not
correct.
Not entirely.
Yes. That's a good way to phrase it.
And there's another movie we'll talk about that was focused on
for a bit until it wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
Kiri actually does a lot of great things that I think are lacking in the movie we'll talk about later.
Of course, yeah.
With that, because I feel like Longlegs is the most out of all the three of our picks. I think Kira is most similar to Longlegs.
I would agree with you. It's funny though because out of all of our picks, and all the similarities that I do see in Longlegs with all three of them, I think Longlegs fails the most at doing this. I really liked this movie. The whole hypnotism thing, I see it as kind of like a hypnotism piece. There's a lot of shots
you think?
of the... But I mean, as sort of like a narrative device, though. I mean, there's a lot of scenes of the protagonist. Like, there's one where he's on a rooftop and he's looking at these flashing lights, and there's these droning sounds in the background throughout where he's just kind of, I don't even, if mumbling in a movie was a thing, it is very much kind of like a hypnotism sort of thing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
I agree
because
with you.
I still struggle to articulate what it is, because it is very much, it's a rhythmic,
I agree with
sort of as if a movie was a pocket watch.
I would say Jordan said earlier that all 4 of the movies we talk about excel at atmosphere. I think all 4 excel at sound design. I think all 4 movies sound great. Yeah. All 4 of them. And this one, yes, does have that, like, it's the quietest of the 4.
Yeah.
It's very quiet. It's like there's not a lot of chaos. Even the violence is in very short bursts.
Yeah.
And
it's not really focused on the violence. Like,
and it is a slow movie. I wouldn't argue that it's not slow.
Course.
But I think that slowness kind of reveals very interesting things thematically about loss of self-identity, which is
and
kind of...
the fear of true self-identity. The
Correct.
whole thing of, like, all of the people that do, do these violent acts, under hypnotism or not, the Antichrist, as I call him, because I think that's what he kind of is sort of the Antichrist in people, sort of the worst versions of themselves. He always asks, like, who are you? Tell me about yourself. Yes. And you are able to, like, learn that, like, I mean, the thing with the cop, he's clearly kind of, like, a little smug to that other cop about, his sort of placement higher in the ranks of being a cop.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily outright want to kill the guy, but when this Antichrist enters his life...
Yeah.
It's literally a devil on your shoulder.
Yeah, right. And that's the very interesting where they explicitly have a line earlier in the movie where someone's like, you couldn't hypnotize somebody to kill if they didn't already want to.
Yeah.
And
somewhere deep down.
Correct. And it kind of it like raises those questions about, like, morale.
What's the darkest, like,
and then it doesn't answer them, which I love that it wonders, which is another thing that I appreciate. We'll talk about.
I fucking love the end.
Yeah, because it implies that it's kind of passed on to our detective, whatever this thing is, evil
or his waitress at least.
Yeah. But there are some visuals in this that really disturb me. I think the face removal
is crazy.
And again, one of the only moments of explicit violence we see involves a face, the main identifying factor in identity.
Yeah.
Removing that is
Yeah, it's just such a dense fucking film. Dude.
It's dense. I want to hear you, Jordan. I want to hear you.
I do too. I'm
Neither of you are wrong.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying.
Nobody's right.
I just wish... I just did not find it very interesting or compelling all that much. I don't know. I get what it's trying to say. I like, this movie wasn't lost on me, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I got it. It's just, I don't know, like, it's... I think... You mentioned this movie being, like, very droning and hypnotizing, and, like, while I do think, like, I get why you like... Not for me is essentially like why I would...
I don't think this movie is for everybody.
I'm trying to...
No, I don't.
And I didn't hate it. I want to get that right off the bat. I liked this movie. I thought it was... Like, again, like, I don't disagree with everything you're saying. Like, it's...
Sure.
Clearly a lot of thought and attention went into the visual language of this movie, tying that into the big themes and ideas it's trying to tackle and everything. I just wish I cared more. Yeah. I don't know, there was a disconnect. And you know me, I'm a plot guy, I'm a character guy. Like, I think...
Sure.
I think there's a purposeful shallowness to the characters in terms of, like... The whole idea of, like, because they're supposed to be kind of blank slates to further this idea, of, you know, identity and everything. And I think, I don't know, something about it, just nothing about what was going on just really compelled me to care that much. Like, I didn't, like, it's interesting. Like, it's an interesting movie. I think that would be the way I would phrase it. There's a lot to, like, chew on and talk about.
Yeah.
Just as a movie.
Yeah.
It's a much better thought experiment, almost, than, like... It just didn't really rivet me as a film.
I have no problem with that. Like I said, like, this is one of those movies that you watch it and you go, like... Even as someone that really liked it, it's like... Oh, yeah, this isn't for everybody.
Yeah, you're like, nah.
But there was something you said in... our 3-person offensive group chat that it was the least visually interesting to you?
I think. Hold on. Let me.
No, I'm not trying to corner you.
Let me collect my thoughts.
Yeah.
Back. I think that's also like the least visually interesting movie out of these four is still like. I'm not saying it's
still
not.
Looks great.
I'm not saying it's not visually interesting.
Oh, you're saying out of the four?
I'm saying out of the four we picked, it has my least favorite like aesthetic, in terms of like. And the way it's shot and everything, I get it, I get why it's there. It's just I wasn't very impressed by this movie. I think it just didn't make a very big impression on me personally, and I think that may also be a byproduct of just watching Silence of the Lambs and Memories of Murders before this.
Yeah.
Two movies I liked a lot more considerably.
Yeah.
And I really don't mean to keep cutting you
you're
off.
good.
No, you have the floor.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know, something about this. There was a disconnect. I was not too invested. I was not too invested in what was going on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That sucks. I texted you the night before. I was just like, yo, this movie's fucking great.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Fair. I think it's totally fair to not think this is as visually interesting as Memories of Murder or Silence of the Lambs. I do think it's quite a bit more than Longlegs.
You know what?
I'm just a whore for fucking film.
You know what? That's honestly, you're probably right.
There are some shots in this movie that have stuck with me. There's one where he goes to the basement of the hospital and the first thing he sees is him silhouetted in the dark with the cigarette.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, the lighter in general is a brilliant visual technique.
The whole my favorite scene in the movie, I think we were talking about this, is when he talks to the hypnotist in the cell.
Yeah.
About 40, when he lights the
There
lighter
is
next
no
to him and
way.
the water comes down, the water will make you feel calm and empty. And it's I really can't pinpoint what about this movie didn't do it for me.
I'm gonna say my favorite scene in the movie is another one with the hypnotist, but it's the one where he does the nurse and he uses the water glass that
is also my favorite
throws.
scene.
Yeah, I think that's really well done.
Because they don't have any implications that the water is also something he's in
because he's told that he's not allowed to smoke there, and you're like, oh, interesting.
You're like, oh, so he's shut down,
and then
but through sort of just the slow sort of like it's almost like crawling towards you, this water the way that it's shot, you're just kind of like,
I love that.
Oh fuck, he's I really think he's like devil on your shoulder for someone that didn't really care for this movie. That's such a great way to put it, because it's like, it's
maybe that's what I'm having. Because usually if a movie like this doesn't do it for me, it's because I didn't get it. But it's hard for me to make peace with a movie that I understood completely. But I was just like, just not one of my favorites.
Yeah. It's shot very. I mean, aside from the really intimate, like, the intimate scenes in it, it's shot very much like a 70s film where it's almost like you're spying on these people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of wide lenses. It's a lot of like a far distance from. So not that that's the reason why it disconnected with you, but it is quite literally a distant shot.
I thought
sorry. I think in order to serve its theme more, it sacrifices a certain mystery aspect. I think
urgency.
Yes, but I also think I would have liked to have not known what was going on until a little later into the movie, because you clock pretty soon that this is the guy doing it, and like you can as you're putting the pieces together. Maybe I'm too smart for this movie, because I think I solved this mystery in like 5 minutes
like
flat.
200 IQ.
But it's not a mystery.
And that's why I don't think it really works for me, because it's a detective serial killer story without the mystery. And again, like, I get why it's not there.
Yeah, I think it's just made for.
It's just
using that as a way to kind of you do like a dual perspective thing, I think works so well, because like every time the serial killer does these hypnotism sequences, you get a little more context every time on like.
Maybe just not even like revealing like who it is until a little bit. Like you can still have like I think a little bit more of something to kind of like draw me in.
I will say I really do like the feeling that I had which after they revealed, after you figure out that like, oh, he's the guy doing it, that feeling was gone. But when it cuts from a murder to him on the beach, and him constantly going back to this guy and being like, where is this?
No, listen, that first scene on the beach, he's walking around talking nonsense. I was like, oh, he did it. Like, you know what I mean?
Even then?
Yeah, I was like, this fucking weirdo? Yeah, it was definitely him.
I love the whole contemplative nature of the movie. That was where I was like, oh, this is some shit.
It
is similar. I did know something was up, and just knowing how editing works. Like, you're not going to cut to this fucking random guy with amnesia
without
for no
any
reason.
purpose. Like,
but it is the way that they handled the reveal of him.
I think
that feeling was gone.
I think I would have just preferred if the parceling out of information to the audience had been a little more conservative as the movie went on.
I think that is perfectly justified.
I think that is and like, again, I didn't hate it. I liked this movie. It's just, I think, like, and again, like who am I? Like, it's obviously, like, obviously it works for most people. Like, it's on fucking Fincher, you know what I mean? So I'm happy to be in the minority here, but I think I almost think like a more conventional mystery narrative would have made this a little bit, I don't know, easier to. I don't know, because it's like you can throw all the themes and ideas you want at me, but if I'm not.
You're not
invested in really what's going on, because you don't you don't really know a lot about like any of these cop characters or like, and it's just I think like
you wanted the formalism out of it.
I think it also a lot of mostly like lesser versions of this movie, but I think a lot of these kinds of movies predicate your investment based on just people are dying. And it's like, oh, we got to figure this out. And it's like, in real life, sure. But in, like, a narrative, like, that's not enough to get me to give a fuck. Like,
I obviously, it's totally, like, personal preference.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like they do give you quite a bit with the main guy. He's not, like, the richest character in the world, but as a cipher for the thing... Everything with his wife, which is another great way to tie in thematically with loss of identity, whatever she's going through.
His schizophrenic, beautiful Japanese wife.
Yeah,
beautiful schizo queen.
But like, I was really invested in him. And,
I'm a fan of the contemplative type of shit.
Yeah,
well, it's not
in a detective thriller.
But I liked Memories of Murder though. So what went wrong here? Like, what was?
And even when you like, even when you get past the point,
formalism.
But even then, that is arguably just as much of a, like...
I don't think... And we'll get to this. Memories of Murder certainly doesn't hold your hand through it.
Correct.
But Cure is definitely much more...
art house.
Spacey, art house, sort of like this, like, floaty sort of, like, movie. Whereas Memories of Murder is there is definitely a direction to where these people are going.
But I think it also
and why they want to go there.
It carries that... kind of floaty lack of urgency. I just think
I agree.
I think the point Memories of Murder is trying to make is more interesting and compelling to me than the point Cure is trying to make.
But Cure even...
And that's a debate in my head, Kyle, not to cut you off, but that is definitely a debate I've been having all day, whereas, like...
Yeah.
In many ways, I fucking loved the ending of Cure.
Oh, yeah.
But also, the ending of Memories of Murder gave me the same feeling of, oh, that's so fucking
like
perfect.
Genuinely shocked me. Like Cure ended, and I was like, but like no, like the ending of Memories of Murder, like genuinely affected me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know.
It just gave you more, I guess.
I think I just got more out of. I think I just got more out of the other movies we saw. And
that's what this podcast is all about.
I just feel like Cure, the second that like it risks getting kind of like one note and repetitive, it starts becoming a lot more like hallucinatory with the editing and the hit. That shot where it's from his wife hanging to him like kneeling.
It does get better as it goes.
Literally rocked me.
As more
second half of this movie is
and then by the last 10 minutes. it's like jump cutting, and he's in like completely different locations,
Yeah.
and you have like no idea
Reality
like
has,
what
like,
the fuck is
completely
even going on
deteriorated
anymore.
at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. There's like nothing left. Reality. Yeah.
What were you? What?
Sorry.
I don't even remember.
Fair enough.
I actually forgot.
I actually that scene in particular, it was kind of adding to the whole like the fear of him becoming the worst version of himself. Is like him falling for the hypnotism.
Yep.
In the beginning, though, because there's that scene where he goes to that same light on the under the bridge where there's like a street or something like that. I don't know how to describe that.
And then
where you saw the first guy.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning, you know, he sees that light. It's like he's falling under it.
And
he's like,
I love what it
resisting
chooses not to tell you, because you always get the point, even though it's not like the whole ending of the movie. The doctor character has become hypnotized, and from his hypnotized like sequence where you see like him cowered in the cell and the detective about to kill him, you know, like, okay, he's been told to kill the detective, and then you don't know if the detective kills him or if he kills himself. Obviously, the detective kills him, but they always cut out the bits. Like
they really do not hold your hand for this movie.
It's really funny how they're like, he strangled himself, and then they walk into that room and it's just covered in blood.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
What? Like, what kind of CSI? Like, who do you have looking at this guy? He exploded. Like,
they put him in a microwave.
Yeah, fucking hell.
That's a very disturbing scene. It's where he starts scratching the X on the wall.
I think it does pick up as it goes. I definitely like the second half a lot.
Yeah, the second half of this movie, I really like.
That's all I got to say on Cure. I thought we had a good discussion on that.
That was good. That was good.
I am gonna give it a big ol' 5.
Oh yeah, nice.
5.
Big 5 bagger. 4.5. I really like it. Could, as you say, could be a 5 on a rewatch.
3.5. I've seen better.
Which I'm still okay with that score.
Like
it's not an offensive score.
He's saying not. He's saying not as good as Elvis.
I did I did have to choke back. I did choke back my violent rage. Sitting here listening to you back to back. Not only give Silence of the Lambs a 4.5, but then give this a 5.
A 9
I
out
have
of
to
10.
respect his opinion. I have to respect his
Immediately
opinion.
where my brain was like,
I have to respect his opinion.
No, that's what I mean. The whole.
What am I saying? No, I don't. Fuck you.
The recommending 4.5s to everybody, but 5s are just personal.
Like you said, made for me,
Yep.
not for him. What are you gonna do?
That's what it's about. That's the magic of movies, baby.
And then we get to yours, 2003.
Yes, Memories of Murder. Bong Joon-ho, who I am not notorious on this podcast, but notorious with you guys. Not crazy about. He doesn't.
Did you like Parasite?
It's fine.
Okay.
Snowpiercer, I don't care for.
I've seen it once.
I haven't seen that one.
They eat bugs.
But I saw this movie before I saw either of those, and I fucking love this movie. So, Memories of Murder is about. You called him out when we watched it. Actor's name. Lead guy.
Oh my god.
Song Kang-ho? Is that what it is?
That actually might be it.
If you're wrong, you're a racist.
Shut up.
I'm kidding.
No,
Song Kang-ho.
Nice, good shit.
Well, there you go. You're not racist.
So Song Kang-ho plays a detective who begins to notice a string of murders that share common elements, and he, over time, begins to think he pins them down to, he thinks he understands the crime, and then as the movie goes on, you realize that maybe this crime is, or this killer is maybe bigger than him.
Sure.
I will admit myself that I did not do a good job of describing that movie because
that's pretty much
it's dense.
Every single time I watch this movie, I see it in a completely different language, and I don't mean the subtitles. I mean this movie just takes on a completely. I fucking love this movie so much.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It is in my top 5 favorite detective, general movies.
See,
I just fucking love
the thing that you can tell that Bong Joon-ho was clearly inspired by Cure. And
7 too.
And he went on to inspire Zodiac, clearly.
Yes.
Which I like this movie better than Zodiac.
I'm
I think
a
it.
huge Zodiac advocate.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that.
Never seen Zodiac.
I think it hits a lot. You know,
Good shit.
the way that this movie moves at such a. The editing is extraordinary.
Just impeccable.
But like the way it moves, it has to ride the line between being engaging but also monotonous and fucking draggy, and somehow it makes that shit work.
Which
Yeah.
is my favorite thing about Bong Joon-ho. That's what I liked about Parasite, although I think Parasite was a little more... Can I say straightforward without getting crucified?
No, you're right.
It's
more straight. Yeah,
It's more straightforward than this.
Much more straightforward, but it also is super contemplative, and there is thematic intention with every single bit of that movie.
Yeah.
And you can tell. The thing, I said this to Jordan when we were watching it, Memories of Murder tackles like... And I think all of his movies probably do this, but it tackles like 8 different themes in one single fucking movie.
Yeah.
But it's...
Flawlessly.
It's contemplative, but it's engaging, and it's funny.
And that's what I'll say is my favorite. I said thematically, how I boiled it down in my Letterboxd review, it's about the mundane frustration of unresolved answers. Like that feeling when you just can't fucking figure it out.
Well, Jordan, you go.
I was just going to say the humor you mentioned, I think that's a big reason why I found this more compelling than Cure.
That's a dour movie.
Because I think the characters are just more charming and likable and just more interesting. I think the characters in this just are a little more...
I love watching people just like nonchalantly dropkick.
Oh, it's so good, dude.
Well, I was going to say, Bong Joon-ho's movies, he's basically a genre of his own, because the way he weaves horror elements, drama, and comedy in is like that's true of Parasite as well.
Because his comedy isn't from like he doesn't like do bits. Like all of his humor comes from like a very honest place that like it's just from like character interactions.
Correct.
It's just what the characters would do.
I weirdly get like a PTA.
I see what you mean.
Movies.
Some of the shots
so
in this,
of him. Oh yeah, I mean like
the long takes,
the
oh,
wide angle
so
lenses. I mean,
they're so good.
And the way he moves his camera. I mean, when something I wanted to mention, but I guess this was a better time to do it. Silence of the Lambs, Jonathan Demme.
Yeah.
Paul Thomas Anderson always quotes him as like one of his influences. If he doesn't have an inspiration for a scene, how would Jonathan Demme?
He's like, let me throw on Silence of the Lambs.
And you can see that with Silence of the
Lambs. I mean, if
Lambs,
we're talking about long takes, like...
And constantly moving that camera and pushing. Bong Joon-ho, I don't think he does that for PTA, but he's just one of his own kind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He is so of himself that it's like when you see a frame of the movie, you hear a piece of dialogue, just like, oh, that's Bong Joon-ho.
See, I mentioned the long takes in Cure are very precise and almost painterly in the way that it moves very subtly. The ones in this one are a lot more ambitious, but not showy.
Yeah.
But like there's so many elements going on. Sometimes there's like 30 extras lined up around the outside, and then like an action will happen that'll lead a group of characters to another group of characters.
It's insane.
His blocking of certain sequences, even down to things. There's a sequence where they're interrogating someone, and the 4 characters are all sitting in the frame in different sections, and it's just little blocking things like that.
A play. Like
correct.
It's sort of like a painting. Like there's the foreground, the background.
It's
then,
just
like,
it's like
layers to it. Dude.
It's unbelievable direction.
Yeah.
I will get my one negative out of the way, which is it's funny. I commented on the score kind of bothering me sometimes in
Cure.
In Silence of the Lambs. It's not actually huge in this. There are a couple tracks in this movie that are so fucking over dramatic.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny?
What?
I didn't love the Cure score. I think there's 2 bits where it's playing like this really like
the opening credits are strange.
Like Sesame Street music, and I was like,
credits are
that might have
weird.
ruined the vibe for the whole thing for me. Like I think that happened, and I was like,
but yeah, there's like. There specifically a couple times in this movie where a character starts to run, the music's like, dun, dun,
give it to me.
Like,
I love it.
and it's a little too much for me.
I get it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, but it's a movie. It's melodrama, you know.
and there's characteristics of the movie, like someone just like, you know, if you had someone in an American movie just like drop kicking people, that would be like, that's a bit. In
I know
itself.
it's a different cultural.
No,
Like,
that's
language.
what I mean. Like, there's
Yes.
just characteristics in this movie outside of the score that like I don't know. Yeah, it's the charm of the movie. There's something charming
there's a charm
about
there
it.
that
I'm not negating that. I totally understand some of the things of this movie. For instance, the guy casually drop kicking people being just something that's like maybe a little distracting.
Dude, that one detective, his every move, every time he gets to fight, is just stomping.
Yeah.
I would argue it's only distracting the first time and then gets funnier every time.
Yeah.
Like, he does it like 5 times in the movie and it just gets funnier every time it goes.
This movie is really funny and entertaining until it isn't anymore.
Man, when it gets fucking scary, I'm gonna let you go.
I think ultimately, I think out of the 3 we picked, I think I jive what this movie is trying to say more, like the most out of the 3 of them. Like,
Well, it's not too focused until the last, I would say 20...
I wouldn't say it's not focused. I would just say it has other things going
Other
on than the theme.
priorities,
Like, and I
yeah.
think again that's kind of that's not to rag on Cure,
No.
but Cure is like theme first and foremost.
I get
Whereas this, it's part of the bigger experience. I think like there's so much going on that even if it wasn't thematically strong, I would still like this is a solid like
Sure.
detective thriller.
I mean-
but I think what I jive with the most about this is just how openly Bong Joon-ho mocks police incompetence.
Yeah.
Just openly says these pigs can't do their jobs.
Yeah.
They're woefully...
They don't care to do their job.
Not only are they woefully unequipped, so they couldn't even do the job if they wanted to, they don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't give a fuck.
They're also like torturing witnesses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
The whole movie.
Just so they can get a solution.
just so they can pin it on someone and be done with
Yep.
it. And I think also, like, just the fact that it's about, like, a community dealing with something like this for the very first time, like, something about that, I don't know, something about that, like, really connected with me. Just, like how deep, like, the roots of the, like, how deeply it shakes this whole, like a very small country. Like they mentioned that you can bike across the country in, like, a day or whatever, and it's like how something like this can just shake everything.
Yeah,
like,
man.
Well, I was talking about how I think that Bong's mixture of genres is so him, so unique.
It's so Bong.
It the way that he takes things that start out as kind of bit jokes and makes them into something really...
Sorry about that.
The way that he kind of twists things that are like jokes into like something very dire and serious. What I'm referring to is the recurring gag where he looks into people's eyes and how it's so funny and like light at first. Like, he's a bad detective. He thinks he can read people until it happens at that last scene. You're like, fuck. Holy shit.
That last scene.
The tunnel, the
that's
tunnel
one of my
scene may
favorite.
be the best thing that Bong Joon-ho has ever done.
I just...
I think this has my
Love-
favorite ending. Of all
I
the movies we're
fucking
talking about.
love the ending to this movie.
Yeah,
so
not just the
much.
tunnel scene, but the
Just the whole like last 15 minutes is great.
the flash
Like,
forward and the look. The talk. We were talking some of the best fourth wall breaks. Oh my god, that last shot is fucking incredible.
and I think
Ordinary.
I think such a funny like throwaway shot is him in the back of the van showing he became like a Vactech salesman or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it shows.
He put this.
But I think that's the ultimate like feather in the cap of how little he really gave a fuck
He
about
didn't-
any of this.
Yeah.
You know, like the minute things got too
A
tough, he
policeman.
jumped ship.
It was a
like,
job. It was a job.
Exactly.
He didn't. Yeah.
Well, when you're used to just fucking like giving tickets to like loiterers and shit, and all of a sudden you have to deal with a fucking Batman villain like out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
something about that like that angle to the story really just
interesting,
helped
dude.
me.
That shocker of the scene where the mentally handicapped kid goes in front of the train.
Say the word, Kyle.
Stop it. Stop it.
They say it in the movie. It's fine.
That got.
You're allowed to.
I was like, holy shit! Didn't expect them to do that. Give me a shock to the senses.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about that one scene that still gives me chills to this day. Out in the rain.
We're talking about where we see the killer do his thing for the first time?
Scary.
Yeah. Where he pokes his head out of like the wheat field in the back is that is like
he is such a master of fucking like
Dude,
unexpected horror. No matter what movie he's making, he's gonna throw some
throws
horror
it in
there.
there.
Like
it's been a while since I've cringed as much as the sequence where they pulled the peaches out of the dead woman.
Yeah.
I was like,
we were watching it, like, I was saying it'd be funny if he's just pulling peaches out and then just pulled a moth out. I was like, oh, it's fucking like Silence of the Lambs.
But like, yeah, it's so unique, such a unique experience. It deals with like the monotony and frustration of the case so well. It builds to such an exceptional climax. The performances are great. Song Kang-ho is so good because he's like, again, like I said with the bit earlier, he's the comedic relief until he isn't anymore. And
I think I read somewhere that Bong Joon-ho was sort of doing a social commentary, not specific to like just, police and their incompetence and also their brutality, because there's also cutaways to just like riots happening.
It's taking place during the 80s during
I think literally the chief has to like walk through protesters at one point.
Yes.
And it ties back. It just, I think it provides like greater social context for like why what they're doing is so fucked up. Like obviously if torturing suspects isn't enough, like not only that, but the whole country is aware they're doing it and is like it also, I'm sorry, like it adds to that, like to the pressure and the urgency of them to solve, like it adds to the stakes, I think. And I think again, not to dog on Cure, but I think that's another thing that's kind of missing is like is the stakes. I think that was something that was kind of like disconnected for me is in this and Silence. Like in Silence, you have the ticking time clock to save this girl before Buffalo Bill can kill her, and in this you get like a real sense that like the country is on the verge of like social collapse, like, you know what I mean, our revolution or whatever. It's like they like, so you're sitting there like, guys, lock the fuck in, and the one cop, the one from Seoul or whatever, is the only one who wants to do anything, and it's a blissfully frustrating experience because it's designed to be that way. But it's so, these characters are so interesting because like they're just they're bad cops.
Well, I'm glad you got that out. You said blissfully frustrating. Like what I read was that Bong Joon-ho was sort of like reflecting on when the South Korean like,
what was it?
The culture.
Was it North Korea? They ate food.
Oh yeah. Fucking South Korea. There was a point where things changed.
Yeah.
And it went from sort of safety with edge to edge and danger. And
do you think there's a commentary there about South Korea's acceptance, more open arm acceptance, I would say, than some other Asian countries of Western culture, because they make a lot of points about like the FBI and America and how they deal with this a lot, and now this has come to Korea, and so like, do you think maybe he's making a commentary on like, I don't know, like maybe like the influence from the outside isn't always good. Like
I do think there's that, because that's what lets in sort of the foreign dangers that you don't know how. But
it's not a foreign danger, and that's the frustrating part, is because like you could blame it on that, and I'm sure there's an idea there, but at the end of the day, like this was homebred. This came from home. You know what I mean? Like right under all of our noses.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you two do not like about this movie?
There's a bit much going on. I think that might be like my one nitpicky criticism is like maybe you could maybe shave like a scene or two off here and there. Sure. You know what I mean?
When I first watched this movie, I think like 2 years ago, maybe 3, because I didn't have Letterboxd at the time.
Sure.
Watched it, and like that time, still really liked it. Mm-hmm. I think kind of like where you're at, where it's just there was something missing. Yeah. Something that didn't really do it for me. Mm-hmm. Watched it again, I think like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago.
Loved it.
Still wasn't, there was something as I said previously, just unspectacular
Mm-hmm.
about it, and I don't mean that in the sense that like Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, no.
Or I do mean it in that way. It was just like it wasn't 5 for me.
Sure. This watch.
This time.
Yeah.
So
You just had to watch it with your gay lover, dude.
I had to watch it with my.
So-
and we did have sex after.
No,
which,
yeah, it was
which
all
gave me a
passionate.
clear.
So that was your rating of 5?
I have it at 5.
I am the highest, like Silence of the Lambs. I'm like tied with Silence of the Lambs. A very strong 4 could be a 5 next time I watch it.
A 4.5, you mean?
Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
very strong 4.5 could be a 5 next time I watch it.
Yeah, same boat.
Yep.
I just fucking love
fucking awesome. And that brings us to this week.
it. The main event.
Longlegs. So spoiler free for Longlegs until we tell you.
Until otherwise.
Here's a long leg spoiler. It sucks.
Stop it. Keep an element of surprise.
Fine.
So Longlegs follows, I'm looking her name up, even though they say it a lot, I forgot, Agent Lee Harker. And it's very, it's her uncovering a series of murders by a serial killer.
Yeah.
And like Cure, it's not as simple as just a serial killer. It's a bunch of families are brutally murdered by the patriarchy of the family, but it's like they were a normal family before it, and then there was no motive.
No signs of like forced entry or like coercion.
Actually, quite a bit like Cure when I say it like that. But
leaves letters behind.
Yes.
That aren't from the patriarchy.
And seem to be satanic in nature.
Yeah, a little bit of cult going on.
And this is a strange film. I will get... So it has, right now, like a 90 or a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Everyone's eating it up.
Everyone's eating it up. And on paper...
Horror is back, baby.
On paper, I loved the 3 movies we talked about so much. Yeah. On paper, this has a lot of the same stuff that I could like. It's very, oppressive in terms of atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's very strikingly shot. I think the performances, specifically the lead one, are very game. They're down for it. The sound design is so good. And it has a lot of, interesting ideas. The problem here is it doesn't do anything with those ideas. And after a strong start, or it kind of sets everything up well, it's content to just spin its wheels until coming to an ending that is both predictable and kind of corny.
Kind of nuts.
I think this movie, you said it very well, takes a lot of elements from the movies we've talked about. Silence, Cure, and Memories of Murder. Here's the thing. I like donuts. I like hamburgers. I like apples. I don't think they're very good when you put them in a blender, though.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
And I think this takes...
too much.
This takes elements that works in other things, but when you bring them together, the vision is just not cohesive. It's something about it. I don't know. It's like bricks with no mortar. You know what I mean? Like nothing's coming together here.
I like when part of a movie's promotion is that it's the scariest film of the decade. Which listen. Like a lot of movies do that.
Yeah.
But there's very few.
But usually they're right.
One is Hereditary, where you hear it to an extent from a certain amount of voices where you're like, well, they did something right.
Yeah.
Guys, I hate to admit it, this movie isn't fucking scary.
Yeah, not even a little bit. Barely thrilling.
I think
it is upsetting.
I just ripped a little ass, by the way.
I heard that. Yeah. The scariest scene in the movie is the opening.
Yeah.
Which is very creepy and upsetting.
And I agree with that. It's definitely the scariest.
Yeah.
It is upset. I was disturbed by a lot in this movie, but I was
unsettled.
I was unsettled
bit,
sometimes.
Sure.
Yes.
I was. Look, so Nicolas Cage plays the sort of antagonist in this movie.
Yeah. Longlegs.
And I sort of plagiarizing someone else's thoughts here. I read someone whose opinions I respect. They said that it's like Nicolas Cage doing an impression of what people think Nicolas Cage does in movies.
Yeah.
He plays this sort of doll-like. I don't even know how to describe. I mean, if you watch the trailer,
I think it's very clearly Buffalo Bill inspired.
So
that's.
Let me before I continue with what I was going to say. You guys, the director of this, Osgood Perkins.
Yes.
You know who his father is.
Anthony
Anthony Perkins, who was a famously closeted.
That's
gay
the building
man.
in Psycho.
Yeah.
Nice call back to last week.
He was a famously closeted gay man.
Absolutely.
He loved cock.
Yes.
So there's very clearly a personal, sort of cathartic, piece in this antagonist.
Yeah.
Because
he's very like effeminate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Buffalo Bill, transvestite, like older, like every time I see the trailer. Yeah, whatever. I every time I see the trailer, I was showing it to my mom, and I would say like, yeah, the old lady's played by Nicolas Cage, and she went like, what old lady? Yeah. So like, I don't know what.
I think he's androgynous. Like you're not supposed to like
pin it down.
Like he's beyond gender. You know what I mean? Like he's like.
It is as you said in the beginning. I was kind of really I was terrified by the beginning of this movie.
It's a great opening.
Well, I mean, but I agree with you though. I think there is something to say about like, and the antagonist of this movie being like an effeminate father figure.
Yeah, there's very clearly that personal.
You know, like
tether.
yeah, like.
And
and the mother like keeping his dark secret.
Yeah.
And
it
resulting in the harm of others. You know.
But we'll get to that.
So this is my second Osgood Perkins film.
Never seen it.
I watched one of his a few years ago, Gretel and Hansel.
Yeah, you told me that. Yeah.
And
heard it was boring.
The thing about his movies is I like the fucking I like the presentation of the movies. I hate the way he paces these fuckers. They're like lethargic.
And that is kind of the shame here, because I don't think Osgood Perkins is a bad director. I don't think the direction in terms of like the tangibles, like the camera work and everything, I don't think that's what's wrong with this movie. Like that is all sound at the very least. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think again when your story is just at the very least derivative, you know what I mean? It's like so obviously derivative of things that have done this
but
idea
unfortunately
better.
Derivative without that. So let's talk about Memory of Murders. You would not be able to connect to Memory of Murders if the characters weren't interesting.
Memories of Murders.
The characters are not interesting in Longlegs.
You know what's an interesting I thought while watching Cure today?
Yeah.
Memories of Murder would have been a better title for that movie.
Yeah.
Because they don't remember the murders.
That's funny. Yeah. But like, even to say that, so Cure, you weren't in love with the characters and stuff.
I will say this: Longlegs makes the characters in Cure look like
That's
fucking
the thing.
like Othello.
So
like,
you had said earlier that Longlegs fails most at being being the successor to Cure.
Yeah.
It's so because in Cure the serial killer character is fascinating endlessly and ties in thematically well.
Yeah.
What is Longlegs' deal? Who gives a fuck?
Can we save that for spoilers? Because that's probably...
Yes, we can. We absolutely can.
There's a lot that I have to say about this movie, but there's also like so much that I want to say that I still, even after, because we saw this Thursday.
Yes, we did.
And it's Sunday now. Like I still am at a loss of like how to articulate what didn't go right for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have that for the way that they handled Nicolas Cage's character.
I already kind of accidentally spoiled something, so we can just give our ratings and get into it. 2.5.
That'd probably be best. I think, it's 2.5 all around.
2.5.
Yeah.
Yep, 2.5. Just straight down the middle. There are things I like.
I think I liked this movie the most out of you guys.
The definition, the definition of a mixed bag.
It's fine.
Like it's like every time it takes a step forward, it takes a step back, and it's just kind of like
it is. It is definitely more disappointing because we have watched three masterpieces right next to each other,
well,
and
I think
it's
also speaking of what Dylan said earlier, where this movie has been marketing itself as the scariest movie of the decade. I like walking around like swinging your Johnson around like that. You give me this.
Yeah, man, it's just not fucking scary, and it doesn't even seem like it's focused on being scary.
No.
There's another, like, one of the things I don't like about this movie is, and I know we're in spoiler territory. This is still just kind of general about the movie. Everybody, the dialogue and the way that people talk in this movie,
I don't like it.
It's just
off.
It's just off beat. I said this off the podcast to the audience. I said this off the podcast when we did Maxine, and I said this to everybody, and like, you ever watch those videos where people intentionally will take a song and then take the vocals of the song and take them off a key?
Yes.
And it's just like, it just doesn't fucking sound
Well,
right.
so wait, when does this movie take place? It's in the 90s, right?
Well, you didn't notice that that
Bill
big ass portrait of Bill Clinton in the background?
Yeah, it's a fair point. It takes place in the 90s, but it has a very 2024 script.
Yeah.
Just not like in like a political sense or like movements of the time. In just the way that characters talk feels too modern.
Mm-hmm.
It feels too like polished. It doesn't feel like it could have come out with Silence of the Lambs.
I mean this in a negative way regarding Longlegs, not the movie I'm comparing it to, but it gave me First Reformed vibes.
I kind of see what you mean.
And First Reformed, like the difference is First Reformed takes place in modern day.
Yeah.
And you know that's thematically relevant to that movie, but it is also just the way that sort of the screenplay is paced.
Yeah.
Longlegs is like it's out of character, which goes to like the putting all these different influences in a blender. Not that First Reformed is an influence, but it's like we're doing all these things and then throwing a really fucking like spacey art house influence onto it. It doesn't fucking work.
I said that I was reminded sometimes of Barbarian in its attempts to kind of switch perspectives at points, the way that an entire flashback sequence is framed in a completely different aspect ratio, ways to kind of be wild and out there. But in Barbarian, it works so much better.
Yeah, but it's not cohesive.
But I think what makes Barbarian work is it embraces the schlockiness of its roots.
Yeah. It's camp. It is
being silly.
Much like in A Violent Nature, this is Jason takes Manhattan trying to be Hereditary.
Yeah.
Like it's an inherently very silly concept that that is trying to present itself as this very serious, dour meditation on generational trauma, and it's just you're not that guy, pal. Like that's like you know what I mean.
That's the ultimate takeaway I have is you're not that guy.
You're not that guy.
I don't think the concept is silly. Because that's why I brought up his dad is Teddy Perkins. It's an out there concept.
Sure.
That should be of its own personality.
Silly in the sense that like you would read this on paper and be like,
but yeah,
like the whole idea of like the devil is making people like
and dolls
kill.
And shit.
And I think silly is more about the last like 20 or 30 minutes of the movie. So throughout the whole movie, they're solving this mystery, trying to figure out what's going on. The supernatural and satanic elements are kind of ambiguous for the most part.
As to where they're coming from.
Yeah, you don't really know like whether or not, even though it's pretty much confirmed that the main protagonist is psychic from like the first 5 minutes.
Which, what the fuck did they do with that?
So
Nothing.
that already tells you that there are supernatural elements at play here. So when the movie is just like, oh fuck it, the devil's real, there's no like impact because I'm already like appetized to the idea of supernatural elements being in this movie.
Yeah.
That's the problem. You're saying all these things that on paper I'm like, oh shit, Satan, cool. Psychic, cool. I can vibe with some of this stuff. Why is it so monotone? Why is it so low energy?
Yeah.
There's no, and I'm not saying that. I just fucking praised Cure for 20 minutes, and that's low energy.
But that's a very grounded, dramatic movie about like real people with like. But
the devil involved.
Kind, but
right?
Okay, this movie explicitly is just like the devil's real and he's killing these people.
Here's my hot take. I think Nick Cage is distracting.
Over time, distracting isn't the word I would use. It's obnoxious.
I think overhyped might be. Like,
I
think
certainly overhyped.
People are coming out of this like, oh, Nick Cage can act. This doesn't even crack.
No.
Top 15 Nicolas Cage.
It's
fun.
He's one of the greatest actors.
He is the only one on the wavelength of the movie I think this should be.
Like,
you know what I mean?
I was down with this performance for like the first few scenes. And again, I love that opening scene. By the time he's screaming, "Mommy! Daddy!" in the car, it was too much.
It's like if you stuck the fucking Joker in Silence of the Lambs. You know what I mean? Like there's but I don't know. I wish the movie itself embraced more what Cage was going for. where it's
Ooh.
just kind of like
Silly.
not even silly, but more like in your face, like energetic, like some, like at least he's going for something.
Yes.
At least he's trying. You
I
know
am,
what I mean?
I am with him. I'm with the concept of him being the eccentric sort of part of this world that, I mean, although this is a problem in the film, like this very mundane, boring, presented.
I mean, the movie's boring. Like I don't think we need to dance around. This movie is boring.
I don't think it's boring. I think the way that these people are presented is boring. I think the way everything is presented is boring, and because of that, I like the juxtaposition that his world is this fucking just like crazy.
Yeah.
So, like you said, beginning, I'm like, oh, Nicolas Cage is about to be the scariest fucking thing ever. And you said you wish they embraced more Nicolas Cage. The more Nicolas Cage they gave us, the more I was internally laughing out of embarrassment.
Because the rest of the movie wasn't on that wavelength,
Exactly.
and I think I would have preferred if it was.
If they were more...
Like, I would have rather the movie tuned to Nicolas Cage's level than Nicolas Cage tuning to the movie's level, because I think it would have served to make the whole thing a little more enjoyable.
That's where I'm conflicted, because again, I like the juxtaposition idea of this very mundane presented...
The idea, sure.
Yes, the idea. But in the execution, not the movie, because I was engaged with the movie, the execution was boring. The execution is boring.
Can I be real with you? I fell asleep for about 5 minutes.
No way, did you?
When she pulls the photo out, and there's like those flash frames that woke my ass up.
Yeah.
And I went,
Which is one of the better scares in the movie. I
Sure.
did really like what they did with that photo.
The sound design is really
Great.
Sure.
It's fantastic.
like we said, like I
really
said,
jarring fucking...
the tangibles for this movie
Are
are sound. Like
Yeah.
that is not the problem here. I think the concept is flawed from the jump. I think it's tonally inconsistent. I think it's derivative, and everything it tries to ape from other movies, it does worse. I know you guys like have been really like hammering on the Cure comparisons. I really think this movie like apes Silence of the Lambs' whole flow for the most part.
I think it tries to do Silence of the Lambs and Seven the most.
Yeah.
Which I know that's not one that is in our
sure, but it is in the sphere of influence of what we're talking about.
And what I saw of these influences is like, it's almost like you're pulling the wrong things from them to put in this blender. Because you're telling me, I mean, I do agree with the Cure comparison. So you're telling me you're pulling from Silence of the Lambs, Seven, Cure, clearly really disturbing sort of art house influences.
Also,
And
like
you
The
get-
Omen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we get this,
Like, this should work. This should work.
and this is where I'm at a loss of like, what?
And then I see tweets and letterbox reviews like I left the theater shaking, and I'm like,
Dog,
first of all, first and if we leave the theater shaking, the last 10 minutes are not good.
Oh,
let me preface.
If they thought that was scary, wait till they see this.
Let me preface with like the whole thing with the mother. On top of, because they introduced the mother relationship, she has this
Which
very
I was on
awkward-
board with it on the phone calls.
Yes.
I was on board with it with the phone calls until we see her in person.
She has this very awkward relationship with her mother. You know, she's constantly calling her, and her mother clearly had some sort of disconnect.
Yeah.
They cut to that after sort of the psychic undertone stuff. Which, let me just remind everybody. I mean, no, you don't need a reminder of this, but like for the audience, they don't do anything with the psychic.
No.
She does one thing in the beginning, and that's
it.
And that's really it.
And then they cut to this thing with this awkward relationship with the mother, and like, yeah, the whole the calls I'm with.
Great.
Seeing her in person, on paper, I'm with.
Yep.
It's jarring where the movie goes from there.
Because they play it off as a twist, even though there's literally no other option that it could be. That she is the thing. They don't set up any red herrings.
Yeah.
They don't set up any dead ends. It is just,
like it's
who
obvious.
else could it be?
And I think this movie kind of takes a page out of the Maxine book where it's one of those things where it's like, again, like on paper, but you're watching it and like it starts strong and you're like, okay, I kind of get the vibe. But as you're like going along and like
oh fuck,
well,
this isn't.
Well, it slowly starts to dawn on you that this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
You're like do you know anything about these characters in these movies? Like
Yeah.
like it becomes so muddled in like what it's trying to say, but also trying to be like again, and I think that's ultimately where this movie's downfall comes from, is it's torn between two schools of thought.
Yeah.
It wants to be like a shove popcorn in your face, date night, kind of like scary flick, but it also wants to be this like high art, heady, like high concept commentary on generational trauma. Yeah. And much like Maxine, it also completely whiffs with a dumbass twist in the third act.
Well, that's the
which also reveals a parent to be the villain of the whole thing. Yeah. And it's just it's nonsense. It's just nonsense.
You used the term earlier, incoherent. Like the climax, the third act starts with her getting knocked unconscious by her mom. And then she just like wakes up in a basement. She's not tied up or anything, and then she just leaves the basement and then just goes to confront her mom.
The scene,
and then it just like the pacing is wrong.
Where Longlegs is in her house and she goes, so she thinks there's a fucking serial killer in her house or around her house. The motherfucker leaves a physical letter, and then she receives a phone call from work, and the next scene she's like on the scene of that. Did she just go to bed?
Well, she also saw someone outside of her house.
Yeah,
and then turns
she looks
around
back, and she sees him in the house.
She sees him in the house. And that's in the first act too.
Yeah.
So that was even something that I was able to like sort of excuse. And
it's not one of those. It's one of those stupid things that isn't stupid until you look back at it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, wait a minute. Like
the third act, maybe that's where the psychic shit sort of comes back full circle. Like she just knew.
I think that's just like half-baked foreshadowing and her like
this is
ties to to Satan.
You mentioned Maxine. Like the thing about a movie that you slowly realize isn't going to go anywhere, I can't help but feel like they also didn't think. Like, they're like, oh, fuck, we're here. So what do we do now?
Yeah.
It forces you to do this thing in the third act that is just so, like, it's both obvious but also fucking absurd.
It's like they clearly...
that they have to resort to tie it
because they've written themselves into a corner.
Yeah, and it's... Okay. There's things I like about this movie.
I said some of them, yeah.
I think I did too. But the way that we're talking about this movie, it's like
because I was disappointed. I was
really
very disappointed.
Didn't work with this movie does outweigh what there is to like about the movie. But there are things.
I said the technicals are great. I said I love Micah Monroe in it.
Because what's
great.
I'm talking about for me. I was disturbed by it
because what's good about it,
but it wasn't scary.
But what's good about it is bare minimum.
Yeah.
For a movie like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it checks all the boxes. But it never really feels like it thinks it's going anywhere, or it feels like... does it even know what it's trying to say?
All I'm saying is a movie being labeled the scariest movie of the last decade should not have a fucking jump scare cue sound when the doll's eyes move. Like that, like lame shit like that should not be in that kind of movie.
That's kind of the thing where it's like you clearly think you're a much like smarter and more important movie than you actually are, and yet you rest on these really like trite horror conventions, like the jump scares and everything. Like if you were a better horror movie, you wouldn't rely on that shit.
Let's fully get to the ending, but let me be the person to segue this because I imagine it'll be one of you two. So, by the way, Longlegs doesn't make it to the end.
No. Longlegs dies.
Longlegs, and you want to talk about the cliche shit, and also what I was talking about with like the more Nicolas Cage they gave me, the less I wanted him.
Yeah.
So they've got Longlegs in an interrogation room. Do you guys remember what the like lead up to it was?
Him singing "Happy Birthday." Oh.
Mundane.
You know what would have been so much better if we hadn't seen Longlegs at all between the opening and that interrogation scene.
I would agree with you. What I would have hated probably more though is if the first time we see Longlegs is when they smash their face multiple times into the table.
But that also, I think if that was only the second time you'd seen him, that also would have made that moment more impactful for what they're going for as like a surprise and like a subversion.
You're
like
probably right.
If it was like
that.
his second scene in the movie and he did that, that would have been much more. It would have affected me more.
I kind of agree.
I think like
I can get down with that.
He's just too overexposed. He's in the movie
it's
too
much.
much.
Overexposed and it's too inoffensive.
And the villain they replace him with is awful.
There you go.
It's the Mandarin effect, dog. Like you're gonna give us.
Take the floor.
You're gonna give us this like cool like say what you will about his performance, like the concept and the aesthetics of the character are cool,
yes,
and like interesting and
creepy
and creepy. Like he's genuinely creepy, and then you do this whole like subverting your expectations. Oh, he dies actually. This is the real villain, and the one you've just substituted with is just not up to snuff. Like I'm like, mad respect to the actress or whatever. No hate. You're not Nicolas Cage. You know what I mean? And like say what you will about Nicolas Cage, whenever he is on screen, you are like locked onto him.
Yeah.
He is like a compelling presence at the very least. And just the mother, the Micah Monroe's mother, who's ultimately the villain of this, because it's revealed. Okay, so should we get so the twist?
No, I'm saying get into
so
it.
The stupid ass twist of this movie. So it turns out that like. So like Girls Are Born on the 14th. It's so convoluted.
The date shit
for no reason. It's so convoluted just because it's like it like it's just trying to be smart. You know what I mean? Like, oh, girls are born on the 14th, and he is. I don't even remember like what the basis for like these killings are. Whatever. Anyway, it turns out Longlegs came from Micah Monroe like a long time ago. Her mother cut a deal with Longlegs, who is like a herald of Satan.
Yes.
It cut a deal with him to save like her daughter's soul, and so Longlegs kind of like became like, I don't know, almost like a father figure. Like they show these scenes of like them in the house or whatever, and then so the mother, it turns out the mother is the one inciting these fathers to kill their families, I guess, to like make Satan happy.
Well, she's a member of the church.
Yeah.
And she's the trusted member of the community that's able to get.
That's how she's able to get in the houses.
And the thing about Longlegs is that he's this doll maker who has this touch, who has like the Satan's touch.
He puts a metal ball in there and it's got Satan juice in it.
Which, what the fuck was that?
It's convoluted. It's convoluted. There's too much going on. It's convoluted, and what it leads to is that I can't even fucking remember like what all the bases for like these killings.
I know.
There's too much going on,
and there's not enough base. I am not satisfied, and I have more to this thought. So I promise I'm cooking with this. Like I'm not satisfied with us not knowing what the deal with Longlegs was. I can't just sit there and be like, "Oh, he's got the touch of Satan." Sorry, no.
Yeah.
What's that?
Like if you're
deal?
just gonna overtly say the devil is real, like you gotta give me more than that.
This is what happens when you take a movie that is purely concept and themes, pure, and give it narrative formalism. This is what happens.
Yeah, because then you go from I love the ambiguity to no, give me more.
What?
Give me more. Now I need an explanation.
Yeah.
You've set up an explanation.
You either go full tilt into one or the other. Like I'm not saying you can't do like a reveal like that well. I'm sure there are examples of it.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't work here. Where either commit to the ambiguity of whether or not
and
like
conceptual
commit to the idea that the audience doesn't need to be spoon-fed everything by the end, because by the end it becomes so literal by the end.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Like the whole idea of like the real villain is generational trauma, and the villain in the end is her mother, and it's just like, like it's so like we've seen this, like especially in like the last 10 years of horror, like we've seen this before.
And even the way Hereditary does it, which is sort of literal, there's just more that they built throughout the movie.
At the very least, Hereditary is at least scary.
Terrifying.
Everything else aside, at least Hereditary functions as a horror movie.
Let's finish because there's more to this ending.
Fuck.
Anybody remember?
So after the twist reveal of her mother, her mother heads to the house of the police captain that's been heading up the case, and it's his daughter's birthday, and they set that up earlier.
Very heavy-handedly be like, by the way, my daughter's birthday's on the 14th.
Come to the party.
And it's like,
and
she's very clearly autistic, not the daughter.
Our main character races to
which would have been an actually interesting thing to maybe fixate on instead of her being psychic. Like something actually like.
To be fair, I think they probably there probably is some sort of to the outside people. She's just autistic.
The one thing that the movie actually admirably remains ambiguous on.
Yeah.
And our main character races to the fucking scene of the crime, and Satan's already done his work, and
Satan's there.
The captain kills his wife, and fucking
the doll maker, or the doll that.
The doll has Satan inside of it, though.
There is a doll that is constantly implied to have been in these homes.
And Micah Monroe stands there
Was it the same doll? I think he makes new ones for every family.
Well, he was dead when this was happening.
Well,
it probably...
Whoa, plot holes and Longlegs, dude? I don't know,
Micah Monroe stands there for 1 minute while her captain murders his wife.
Yeah, she just lets that happen.
She just straight lets that happen.
She was probably conflicted as to what to do with her mother versus what to do in front of the child versus what to do with the doll.
Maybe the movie can make a point of that being the case.
Yeah.
Just a wide shot.
And that's pretty much all that happens. Like that.
She shoots her mom.
Saves the little girl.
Shoots the doll.
Whatever.
Shoots the captain.
I guess by extension she shoots Satan.
Mm-hmm. She does. She shoots.
TV Satan was in hell like, oh bitch, like, oh fuck that nicked me.
Oh, you fucking bitch.
Nicked him in the ear.
Dumbass ending.
Wide left.
Yeah, I don't like the ending at all.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many. Like again, like the jacket's nice. Like the presentation's good. It's just that everything at the core of this movie is so misguided.
Yeah. In
terms of like the decisions it makes as a narrative, the themes it tries to tackle. Like it's who the fuck. Shut up. It's like you know when you fucking like when you're a kid. I'm gonna use another blender metaphor. You know when you're a kid and you put all the fucking bath bombs in there and you're like, oh, this is gonna be great. Red, blue, purple.
It makes like brown.
And it makes shit brown.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is. Like you've taken all of these elements and put it in and it just doesn't come. It is shit brown.
Since I've been dumping on the movie, I have a couple more positives to add.
Sure, well,
because I've been like literally.
What on that note? Yeah.
Early on in the movie, during the scene that reveals her psychic powers, I think the shock of her partner getting shot in the face as soon as he opens the door is a really great scare. And then that sequence through the house reminded me of one of the Silence of the Lambs ones.
Oh yeah, that feels exactly like when she's going through.
Yep, and I was down for that.
But like I said, this movie starts strong, and it just like slowly dawns on you that it's nonsense.
The one other thing, and something that I find creepier than Nicolas Cage in this movie, I think there's a one-scene performance by actress Kiernan Shipka that's really good.
She's
the mental patient in that one sequence. So yeah,
I'll agree with you.
I think she's
just to support my 2.5. I agree. She's good in that.
She's good in that. By that point, I was like tired of the exposition.
Yeah.
I think on its own, isolated away, I think she's doing really good.
I'll agree with you just so I
very
can support,
unsettling performance.
Just so I can support my 2.5 rating.
And I feel like we haven't given her enough credit. I really liked Micah Monroe.
I did too.
In this. I thought Micah Monroe.
I did too.
I think she is like the only thing that keeps this from being like
completely nonsensical.
Like the fact that there is a really strong performance at the core of
I'll
this
agree with you.
Is like kind of what anchors this ship from completely falling apart.
When I was coming out of the theater, I chalked it up to her just being another product of like the fucking just unspectacular nature of this movie.
Yeah.
I think she is the standout.
Yeah.
I think she does understand the most, maybe even more than the director. I think she understands the most.
I don't think that's a bad take. I think she she kind of kills it in
I
this.
think it's her and Nicolas Cage,
Yeah.
although it's just the way they handle Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Not necessarily him, although at times he got a little too silly for me. She was,
And I think that's true of her in other movies as well. I think she is usually like anchoring the movie. Like I don't like
Hot
it.
Summer Nights, she was definitely the best part.
And I don't like It Follows. and she's the
It's
best
funny
part.
that the Nicolas Cage point. Like I do agree he gets too silly, but in my mind, like
He's still going.
but in my mind, it's like the movie is like holding him back.
Come on, man.
Like no, like you know what I mean? Like like.
I have nothing else to say.
Yeah.
No, me neither.
I don't know. Like I'm.
Legs are long. And
This
shit.
is. I am okay with this being as widely enjoyed as it is. Like people.
Sure.
Like I get why this is being such a crowd pleaser. It's just me personally. I just don't think this really comes together.
Yeah.
I'm not offended by people liking this movie.
No, I'm
because
not either.
I don't think it's an offensively bad movie.
No,
And
no,
in
no.
fact, just to give us some comfort, because we are in the minority with this,
Yeah.
the people, the pretentious film critics that I follow agree with us. They're like, it's... I see some ranging, it's horrible, to...
I
most
literally
ranging.
have the range from the people I follow on Letterboxd is from a 3 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. So like it is a divisive movie.
3 out of
There's-
10 was also the
I
lowest
think.
I heard.
Yeah.
I think audiences are just easily impressed.
Which is ironic, given the climate of movies today. Yeah. Anyways.
And it's like this is a movie that should have easily impressed me as the #1 Cure fan, but
Yeah.
it didn't. It didn't do it. Anyway, that's the episode. The good discussions. Good
I thought so, yeah. We didn't
good
have...
vibes.
Yeah.
No bullshit. We cut right to it.
Yeah.
Next week, we are going to have a special guest on. Mr. Harsh Jaswal is joining
Oh,
again.
is it Twisters?
And
Oh,
it's
no.
and it's Twisters. So we're going to be talking about the new Twisters and the original Twister. That's it. Simple
Yeah.
episode.
Oh, yeah.
Room for lots of bullshit.
Room for a lot of bullshit.
Riffing.
Yeah.
Riffing.
Yeah.
If you liked the episode with Dom,
Oh, just wait. Just buckle up.
Yeah.
Wait until they start
Have you-
talking about Zack Snyder.
Have you ever met Harsh?
No,
You're gonna
of course not.
love
Cool guy.
Harsh. You guys are gonna get
I was
along
about to say,
swimmingly.
you have I mean, I can't wait, Harsh, directly to you, I can't wait for our Zack Snyder conversation. But yeah,
Us in the corner with,
two
like-
movies and a guest that we can
Yeah,
fucking riff
absolutely.
on.
No, yeah.
That's gonna be great.
It's gonna be crazy.
If you like the podcast, you can follow it on Twitter at Cinema Shakedown and Instagram at Cinema Shakedown Pod. You can follow me personally on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kyle Craigbaum. That's KRIEGHBAUM.
And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at J_Dennis99 or on Letterboxd at my name, Jordan Dennis.
And you can leave me the fuck alone.
Slope God, the Slope God.
I do have one question to follow up. Out of the three of us, who has the longest legs?
It's probably Twig Boy over
I
here.
don't know. Like I'm looking at you, Kyle.
No, I
and,
mean
like,
I'm 5'8". I definitely don't have.
You're
the
like,
longest legs.
I mean
You
this
have nice legs,
I mean this
too.
complimentary. You're like mostly leg.
Yeah.
Like
I'll take it.
I will say I have a very small. After we're done with this, I'll show you. I
Yeah.
have a very small upper body. Like
I'm looking at it.
it's like this, and then it is like mostly.
Dude, you're like Taylor Swift. That things go up. Those things go up.
You got
days.
trunks, dude. You got
Yeah.
trunks, Kyle.
Shit, yeah.
Thank you.
Love you.
Peace.